In this video, I'll be sharing about a man whose father and 3 brothers were all diabetic, and now he was moving toward diabetes and was classified as a pre-diabetic. But this man was smart. He did not simply yield to the inevitable, but instead he began to back away from diabetes. Today, his doctor says he's not even pre-diabetic anymore. Also, we'll look at the old adage, knowledge is power, and we'll see exactly how that applies to blood sugar issues and how it can play a major role in delivering you from the clutches of diabetes. Before we get to today's video, I wanted to share with you this little plaque that YouTube sent me. It says, "Presented to beat diabetes for passing 100,000 subscribers." Well, that's kind of cool and I appreciate it, but the truth is there is a far greater award than this. And that award, or should I say awards in the plural, come from you guys. When you leave a comment and tell me how that when you were first diagnosed with diabetes, you were in a panic, you were scared to death, and then you go on to say that after watching some of my videos, you came up with a game plan for beating diabetes, and then you tell how it has worked for you and now your numbers are no longer in the diabetic range. Well, what could be more of an award than that? So thank you for those testimonies and for sharing your success stories with our viewers. But I do have to say there is one still greater award than even your testimonies, an award that every one of us should aim for, and that is that awesome day when we'll stand before the Lord Jesus and hopefully hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Now that is the ultimate award. Okay, let's get on to today's video. We'll be looking at some of the comments again today, but I want to start with an email that I received. It's kind of a long email, but I really feel it's important, so I want to share it with you. This individual says, "In my family, my late father and all 3 of my older brothers developed type 2 diabetes." Wow, talk about a family history. His dad and 3 of his brothers, and this is a male as well, but 3 of his brothers and his dad had all had type 2 diabetes. He says, "My father spent the last 8 years of his life in a nursing home with no hope of ever going home again." Underscore those words, no hope. He had a leg amputated due to the diabetes. He passed away at 77. Well, he made it longer than some people do, but not much of a quality of life. My oldest brother, now 74, injects insulin before every meal. His kidneys are failing and he's overweight. My 2 other brothers, ages 68 and 71, are on metformin. They have A1C readings in the 8s. And a few years ago, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic with an A1C of 5.8, a non-fasting glucose of 165 2 hours after a meal, and fasting blood levels averaging around 110. So, not fully diabetic, but he said it was coming on me. He knew what had happened with his dad. He knew what had happened with his brothers. He says, "I was on the standard American diet." And I like the way this guy writes. He says, "I had a standard American doctor." Well, standard American diet goes right along with the standard American doctor. He says, who took a wait-and-see approach to see if it got worse. Well, duh, yeah, it's going to get worse. Let me give you a little clue here, folks. Diabetes will always get worse unless you do something major about it. There's a word called intervention, which means something is headed this direction and you suddenly stop it and you move it off course and now it's going a different direction. That's intervention. If there's no intervention, if there are no changes, of course diabetes will get worse. He said that experiment of just waiting and seeing had already been run 4 times by the men in my family. I saw no reason for it to run a 5th time. I knew the result would not be good. Very, very smart. He says his son refers to his uncles as early warnings canaries in a diabetic coal mine. In other words, they demonstrated what's going to happen to you. I was 61 years old when YouTube first suggested your famous/infamous banana and candy bars video. I like the way this guy writes. He says, I was quite impressed that you reported unexpected results instead of hiding them. Well, I admitted, I expected the bananas and the candy bars. They were both equal carbs, and I just figured they'd both do about the same damage. I knew the bananas would raise my blood sugar significantly. I knew the candy bars would raise my blood sugar significantly. Turned out the bananas raised it much higher than the candy, and I admitted, I don't quite understand this. Now I do, and I've had dozens and dozens of people say it was the fat in the candy bars, and I'm sure that's true. Anyway, he says, I got the message the bananas could be as bad as candy bars for someone with insulin resistance. Yeah, that was the message. It wasn't start eating candy bars. So many people have said that. I don't know why anybody could think I was that stupid to say don't eat bananas, start eating candy bars. But anyway, he says, YouTube suggested more of your videos, and I was hooked. I subscribed. I'm 62 now. I decided while I'm still young, I like that, I have to deal with this thing head on. 6 months ago, I cut sugars, then starches, then all processed carbs. Recently added time-restricted eating to my lifestyle. I've lost about 20 pounds since then. Latest blood sugar tests indicate I still have some insulin resistance. But the A1C retreated to the mid to low fives. I took an oral glucose challenge test where I drank 75 milligrams of glucose, no more sugar than I would probably have in a week, and my glucose level after 2 hours was 124. Not spectacular, but certainly better than 165. Well, that's great. To go through that 75 milligrams of glucose, sweetened liquid, and end up with a 124, that's quite good. My new doctor doesn't consider me pre-diabetic anymore, but I feel I'm still not out of the woods. Well, that's smart. Even if I do get down further, I know better than to go back to the standard American diet. And then he gives his lesson, which is really one of the main reasons I wanted to share his story. I love what he says for his lesson. And it's a lesson for all of us, and especially for some of you out there that are in the pre-diabetic range. Don't wait, he says, until you have high numbers and the bad news of full-blown type 2 diabetes. If you become aware of potential before then, kudos to your viewers who discovered they were in trouble and have dealt with it. This warning is for those who think they can deal with it later. Don't wait. Easier to avoid it now than to fix it later. In other words, don't wait until you've got a 14 A1C and you can barely see and you're urinating every 5 minutes and you're constantly thirsty. Don't wait till then. How much smarter to catch it early. And you've got much better chance for much better success, much quicker success. And I really think the smartest people I run across in my comments are those who say, I don't have diabetes, but I've got a family history, or I'm concerned I could have it later down the line, and I'm watching my diet already, and I'm doing the low-carb thing. I just don't want to ever get there. There is a scripture that says this, A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple go on and are punished. Well, that is so applicable in this case. A prudent, which means a smart guy, will see evil coming his way and he will avoid it, however he has to avoid it. But simple people, that is the dumb, the ones that, just don't know anything, they just head right toward it and let it head toward them. So to put it in an illustration form, it would be something like this. You're walking down the street. You've got a guy that hates you and has threatened to kill you. And you're walking down the street and you see him coming your direction with 5 of his buddies, and they all have machetes and clubs in their hands, and they're headed straight for you. What do? Well, what you don't do is walk right up to him and shake his hand and say, how are you doing, my friend? If they're coming at you with machetes and clubs and a look of hate and murder in their eyes, you get out of there. You run, you hide, you do whatever you have to do. Well, the scripture says the prudent man sees the evil coming and he hides himself, but the simple just pass right on and they are punished. And if ever that was true, it is sure true with diabetes. When you see it coming, my friend, when the doctor says you're at 5.8, 5.9, 6.0, 6.1 A1C, or when you begin to recognize you've got some unstable blood sugar and it's bouncing too high an hour after you eat and then it's dropping too low, which was my case, 3 or 4 hours later, it's time to do something about it. and it's the smartest thing in the world. This guy is sharp. He is not going to go the way of his brothers and his father. He is going to have a much better path. Well, that's a wonderful testimony. Here's another comment. This person says, I think it's high time you talk also about exercise, and I've been criticized a lot about not saying too much about exercise. The low-carb diet is important, but exercise can give a significant boost on fighting against diabetes. Well, I will agree that exercise can be helpful, but the honest truth is it's not that helpful. It's some helpful. It's a little bit helpful. It's not that helpful. I know it can be impressive to think of yourself going to the gym and you're pumping iron and you're sweating, the sweat's pouring down your face and your muscles are bulging. And then, you get on that bicycle and you just ride it and the sweat is pouring down and you just feel so good. And after an hour and a half, you're worn out. You're like a limp rag. And you say to yourself, man, I've done myself a lot of good. But guess what? You could do more good by simply avoiding that baked potato when somebody offers it to you with your dinner tonight. That just skipping a big baked potato is far more powerful in terms of blood glucose control than going to the gym for an hour and a half, or a big mound of rice, or cherry pie with ice cream, and on I could go. The most powerful exercise you can do is the exercise of pushing away the high-carb foods and embracing the low ones. Having said that, yes, I do exercise. I use an elliptical trainer. And in fact, most of the experts that I'm hearing are telling us that really the lighter exercises are better than the big, heavy, sweaty, drive myself down to nothing with pumping iron and doing wind sprints and so forth. But do what you want to do. I'm not your personal trainer. And so you do what you want to do. And if you want to exercise tremendously and go to the gym, go for it. But personally, I'd rather do some light exercise and just say no to the baked potato, no to the breakfast cereal, no to the rice, no to the pie and the cake and the candy and the soda and so forth. All right. Here's another comment who says, what he is saying is working for me. My doctor won't even prescribe the number of test strips that help me, even though my insurance would cover a large portion of the cost if he did. Doctor's not wanting to prescribe a bunch of test strips for this person. He simply wants me to take metformin. Well, that's just sad. He simply wants me to take metformin. Don't bother to check yourself. Just let me, the all-wise doctor, prescribe your meds and you just keep going on as you are. Don't bother to test yourself. What good could that possibly do? Now, I'm being sarcastic in case you hadn't figured that out. He says, so I'm going out of pocket and hope to teach the old doctor a new trick on my next appointment on March 31st. I like that. I'm hoping to teach the old doctor a new trick. Good for you, my friend. I started with 480 blood glucose. Wow, that is very high. That's getting to the point where the meter won't read it anymore. And a 10.8 A1C to my current numbers, and this is based on a phone app. He hasn't been back to the doctor. But he uses the phone app called Dr. Sugar. I'm not familiar with that, but he says, according to this app, right now, my numbers are averaging around 100. My A1C would be around 5.3. Wow, in less than 2 months. Less than 2 months, he's gone from about a 480 blood glucose to 100. That's just unbelievable. 5.3 A1C from 10.8. By doing what? Well, by going low carb. Why would a doctor not want his patient to have test strips? I just don't get that at all. We have the saying, knowledge is power. And when it comes to diabetes, knowing what's going on with you and knowing exactly where you are and knowing which direction you need to go, that kind of knowledge is powerful, my friend. But you won't have it without your glucose meter. I mean, you could go into the lab, every week or two and do A1Cs, but that's really not going to be that effective because A1C covers about 3 months' time. So that meter is going to tell you where you are right now, right this very moment. Use your meter in the morning when you wake up. Use it after meals. Use it before meals to see the range that you're getting. Imagine you're driving a car, and the car is just behaving terribly. It shudders. It won't hardly start. It's just driving like a dog. And you don't know anything about cars. You don't know what's wrong. Is it the transmission? Is it the engine? What is going on? I don't have a clue. You wonder to yourself, could this thing be so expensive it's going to cost me a couple of $1,000s? Is it a small thing? You're ignorant. We have a phrase, in the dark. You're in the dark. When the lights are all out, you can't see a thing. And so you're driving this car that's just driving terribly, and you're totally ignorant. You don't have a clue what's going on. And then a mechanic friend of yours comes along and says, let me take a quick look at your car. And he assesses the car. He says, you know what? All you need is some spark plugs, and you'll be just fine. That car will drive perfectly. Just get yourself a little tune-up, or let me change your spark plugs. You'll be fine. So it turns out some little deal like spark plugs, which may cost you $30, $40, $50, can fix you right up, but you didn't know that before. You needed some information. You needed knowledge. Knowledge is what? Knowledge is power. So as a diabetic, we need to know which foods are going to drive my blood sugar crazy and which ones will not. And a doctor who says, you don't need test strips, just take my word for it. Take your metformin every day or every morning and every evening, and you'll do about as good as you can. Of course, you'll get worse and worse, but it will slow things down a bit. Doc, why would you try to keep this patient of yours from testing himself from time to time? What possible harm could that do? Excuse me for getting a bit passionate about this, but it's because I am passionate about it.